1986 was the year that the Oprah Winfrey Show went national, and we celebrated Martin Luther King holiday for the first time. Millions of Americans came together for Hands Across America. Shoulder pads, feathered hair, and swatches were popular, and top movies included Pretty in Pink and Top Gun. It was to be the year of the shuttle, with a launch on average every month. But the events of January 28th changed that and changed the space program forever.
SRB hydraulic power units have started. T-minus 21 seconds, and the solid rocket booster engine gimbal now underway. T-minus 15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Good roll program confirmed. Challenger now heading down range. Engines beginning throttling down now at 94%. Normal throttles for most of the flight, 104%. We'll throttle down to 65% shortly. Engines at 65%, 3 engines running normally, 3 good fuel cells, 3 good APUs. Velocity 2,257 feet per second. Altitude 4.3 nautical miles, downrange distance 3 nautical miles.
So the 25th Space Shuttle mission is now on the way after more delays than NASA cares to count. This morning it looked as though they were not going to be able to get off.
1 minute 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles.
Looks like a couple of the solid rocket boosters blew away from the side of the shuttle in an explosion.
Flight controllers here looking very carefully at the situation. Obviously a major malfunction.
13% of Americans watched that footage live on TV, and within an hour, 85% of Americans knew that the Challenger had blown up and all on board had perished. And this was at a time before the internet, before cell phones. People remember where they were when they heard about the disaster, and everybody wanted to know how.
The Challenger space shuttle had flown 9 successful trips prior to its final one in 1986. This flight was unique because it was also the launch of the Teacher in Space project, which aimed to spark interest in science, math, and space exploration. School teacher Krista McAuliffe was the first teacher selected to take part in this program and was on board the day of the tragedy. Because of her presence, the launch was transmitted live to a number of schools across the nation. Along with McAuliffe was a crew of 6 astronauts who also perished. A number of problems plagued the Challenger flight of 1986, including multiple delays that pushed the launch date from January 22nd to the 28th. It was predicted to be an uncommonly cold morning at Kennedy Space Center on the 28th, with temperatures falling below freezing. It was suspected this frigid weather could affect the flight's rubber O-rings, which were a vital piece of equipment. Failure of these O-rings to properly seal could mean destruction of the orbiter and its crew. Despite these doubts, NASA decided to go ahead with the launch. Workers cleared the shuttle of ice overnight, and it was ready the morning of the 28th. At 11:38 a.m., the flight took off. Within 73 seconds, the shuttle had broken up in the air. It continued to propel itself into the atmosphere before finally falling into the ocean off the coast of Florida. President Ronald Reagan set up an official investigation into the Challenger disaster.
This is truly a national loss.
The Rogers Commission found that the O-ring had failed, initiating a series of events that ultimately caused the shuttle to break apart. It was later discovered that the crew members were not killed instantly during this breakup, but more likely upon their impact with the ocean. The commission also faulted NASA officials who failed to heed suggestions that the shuttle was in trouble prior to launch. Following the Challenger disaster, NASA programs were grounded for almost 3 years while investigations continued and modifications were made to prevent similar failures in the future.
Before the event, from information that was available and understanding that was fully appreciated everywhere, that this seal would become unsatisfactory at some temperature, and was there some sort of a suggestion of a temperature at which the SRB, I guess you call it,
Yes,
shouldn't be run?
Yes, sir. There was a suggestion of that. To answer the first question, given the configuration that we were in, that the seal would function at that temperature. That was the final judgment.
NASA officials discounted the possible effect of cold weather on the resiliency of the rubber O-ring on launch day, but Commission member Richard Feynman, after examining the O-ring, had a surprise.
Well, I took the stuff that I got out of your seal and I put it in ice water. And I discovered that when you put some pressure on it for a while and then undo it, it maintains, it doesn't stretch back, it stays the same dimension. In other words, for a few seconds at least, and more seconds than that, there's no resilience in this particular material when it's at a temperature of 32 degrees. I believe that has some significance for our problem.
So how was the decision to launch made? After several delays, NASA planned to launch on the morning of January 28th, but it was unseasonably cold in Florida to say the least. Temperatures for that morning were forecasted to be 24 degrees Fahrenheit. NASA remembered that Norton Thickle Engineering had been concerned about low-temperature launch, so they called the engineering firm to ask. The entire SRB engineering group recommended waiting until the afternoon for warmer temperatures. The O-rings had been qualified for 40 degrees Fahrenheit and never tested in freezing temperatures. NASA said you can't just say the afternoon, you have to give us a specific launch temperature. And they requested a formal presentation within 2 hours, which was less than 15 hours before the launch. So the Thickle engineers scrambled to put together data, and during the presentation they recommended a minimum launch temperature of 53 degrees Fahrenheit. They were expecting a rubber stamp from NASA. Instead, NASA tore apart their data. They knew they could not go against a contractor's no-launch recommendation, but a minimum launch temperature of 53 degrees Fahrenheit would destroy their ambitious launch schedule for the shuttle. The general manager at Thickle was feeling pressure. He wanted to keep his primary customer, NASA, happy, so he muted the line, and he turned to his 3 senior managers and said, quote, "We need to make a management decision." 2 of them changed their mind and said launch. So he turned to the 3rd and said, quote, "Take off your engineering hat and put on your management hat." And he did. He changed his vote. They unmuted the line and gave the go-ahead to launch. NASA never questioned why their decision changed or asked for their rationale. No one stood up, so everyone was a go for launch.